Welcome back to Unraveling the Brain. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Madsen. Today we get a wonderful opportunity to talk with Michel Khoury. He owns, is that correct word?
Operates, manages.
Manages Eastwood Schools in the Middle East, and super excited to chat with him about, the affairs of education and how, what we do correlates with that, and kind of just have a really good conversation around how kids are learning, important aspects of development. And so let's jump in the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Josh, for inviting me down here. It's finally a pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
After the hundreds of hours of Instagram that I've watched you on.
Yes.
Both, me and my family have watched you on and learning about what you do here, something really, really special, something that we've never seen before.
Great.
So it's great to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. So tell us about your schools. Let's start there, and then we're going to really dive into the nitty-gritty a little bit.
So I run a group of schools called the Eastwood Schools. We are primarily based in the Middle East, and now we're expanding into Europe. We have 2 schools in Lebanon, a school in Iraq, a school in Nigeria, and an online school based out of Switzerland, which is our guiding star right now. So we're really excited about our new online school that we're
for homeschooling primarily.
For homeschooling and live one-on-one instruction schooling.
And correct me if I'm wrong, are a lot of this nonprofit, is that correct?
Yes, most of this is nonprofit. We have a nonprofit foundation based out of California where we receive donations for our schools, and for educating students. So about 35% of our student cohort, student base all over the world, get educated for free. So we are known in the Middle East for having the best IB, International Baccalaureate program. People aren't too familiar with the IB program here in the U.S. It's essentially the golden standard of academic education, of academics in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you told me a while back kind of about your story about how the schools got started. I think that's really interesting for a lot of people. It's a really cool story. So run through that real quick.
So I follow in my father's footsteps. My father established the school in 1973. He was 19 years old. The abridged version is he comes from a very good background, and his father told him that he needed to be a doctor to be able to help and cure the poor. So my father went into the first medicine class, into the dissection class, dissected a frog, passed out, went back to his father and said, "Listen, I'm not going to do this." He's like, "Well, then you need to be a judge because, you need to make sure that the poor are treated fairly." Went to the university, the Lebanese university, and sat all the way in the back of the auditorium. At the time, the first year auditorium is, 1,000 kids there. Really couldn't understand anything. It just wasn't for him. And then went back to him and said, "Listen, you want me to help the poor? I'm going to build an amazing school to help children of our community." And that's what happened. He started Eastwood College at the time in 1973. And it is what it is now. The success we have is all because of him.
Yeah, and you're working on building off it. That's fantastic.
We're building a lot off of it. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, tell us about the kind of the foundational pieces that might make this school a little bit different from other schools, and how it differs. And also we're going to get into this because also they're starting a homeschooling branch in the United States next year.
Yes.
So
we're very excited about that. I'll explain. I'll showcase. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. What's different about our schools is our approach to how we treat children. First, everything is driven by love. Every decision we make is how much we love and we care for our children. We have very small classroom sizes. We are ranked the top school in the region, in the Middle East, for our IB program. And we essentially try to bridge the gap between real life learning and what students need to learn and what students are essentially learning. So nothing is learned or is taught in silo. I'll give you an example, and this is an example I always give my parents that I interview. Let's say, if students are studying the weather, the rain. So instead of actually studying, how the precipitation happens and how evaporation happens, we go outside, we collect the water, We collect rainwater, we compare it to seawater. So it's a very hands-on approach for learning. And that's what has made us extremely special in terms of our academic program in the last 15 years or so.
Yeah. So instead of just looking at a book on something, you're actually getting the tactile sensation of it, incorporating all those other aspects of the developmental process that needs to happen for us to really learn, which is super cool.
For sure. And it's always using, your hands, your fingers, your senses. It's using your 5 senses, but it's also being outdoor, outside learning. It's not being in the classroom necessarily. And learning isn't a one and a uni or a sole person, unidirectional learning. It starts with a question, with a big picture question, and then it's the students that have to explore and engage and figure out this question, this big picture question in the program.
Right. That's awesome. This is a big question for you. What would you say currently, because I know you're in a lot of different countries, what would you say some of the biggest challenges of the current educational systems are? Like, what are the biggest downfalls of some programs out there, or some of the biggest things that we can improve upon to help our kids learn at a higher rate?
Well, after coming and visiting you here is really understanding how we can incorporate a lot of what you do.
The physical aspect. Foundational pieces, yeah.
Foundational pieces of children as they are starting their educational path, which is at 3 and 4 and 5 years old. And really detecting how to increase the capability or standards of every single child using what you're doing. Because we're not aware if children have formed or have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Have created that strong base to start school.
Right. Those basic neurological foundational pieces, like being able to balance appropriately, being able to track a line with their eyes.
Exactly.
Those just basic skills. And
from a school perspective, that's a very medical alley or silo that we don't have any questions to. We're not accustomed to it. We don't ask any questions.
Yep.
We don't interview the parents based on that. And I feel like if we're able to get the foundational pieces correct, even if children haven't received that strong base from the house, it could be our response. It could be the school's responsibility to make sure that, like what we discussed about primitive reflexes, for example, to make sure that the primitive reflexes in their early years stage, so at 3, 4, and 5 year olds are all finished.
Right. There's some pretty interesting books and stuff out there, especially Sally Goddard. She's written some interesting stuff on. It's called Motor Readiness for School. And if you think back, even like when I talk to kindergarten teachers, that have been in the classroom for 30, 40 years, they say, we used to do a motor readiness test before they would come into school. We'd see how their balance is. We'd see if they can stand on one leg. Can they do a jumping jack? Like those basic body movements, ability to sit upright, sit still, all those things, but they no longer do those things, which is really interesting. Yeah.
And for us, I've been in the education business for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And we don't test. Okay, we test for dexterity.
Yeah.
We test fine motor skills if a kid can hold a pen, but we don't test if a kid can jump or balance or sit properly or stand, or even the climbing wall that you have here, or even do a climbing wall, because that has a lot to do.
Yeah,
that has a lot to do with brain function, right?
Yeah, for sure. If they can't motor plan a movement, that means their cerebellum isn't functioning efficiently. Their motor planning centers and their frontal cortex aren't functioning efficiently. That means also if they can't motor plan their gross motor movements, they also can't motor plan their fine motor movements. They can't motor plan their movements of their eyes efficiently. So all of those things that we develop our brain through movement. So, and
we don't know that.
Yeah.
For us, we're not a culture that knows this, the science behind it.
Yeah.
We've been inherited education, so to speak.
Right.
This is what you're supposed to do in the classroom. to be able to get the best results, to be able to get to, to be able to get these kids to university.
Yeah.
So this has been inherited for the last, 50, 60 years.
Yep.
Common learning theory. But to answer your question, that is our biggest challenge now that we've come and seen the center. I've come and seen the center. I see what you do. The incredible work is, how do we incorporate what you do and make that the responsibility for schools, and not only our school.
Yeah.
To make it public policy.
Right.
And I feel that you have a big role to play. You do.
Well, we can work on that for sure. And you had asked me, it was an interesting question, because I had said, oh yeah, we'll end up homeschooling our son, and you asked, well, why will you homeschool? And there's some values and aspects there too, but the biggest things honestly was, I don't want my kids sitting all day. Like, I don't want them sitting for 6-7 hours straight, and get a couple recesses when they could get their schoolwork done in a couple hours, and they could be playing the rest of the day. Because I understand, and I've seen this play throughout, especially with other kids that are homeschooled, where they do move consistently. They're moving all the time, and how well developed those kids are. It's really unbelievable. But I want that for my own son. I want him to be consistently moving and engaging, and not just sitting. And so I think that's a huge aspect that for us, for my family.
You had mentioned you wanted to homeschool your son as of next year. The issue with homeschooling, with the homeschooling network or institutions here, is they give the parents all the resources and material, and the burden is put on the parents.
Yeah.
So what we're coming up with for next year is our Homeschooling Plus system, where we will make sure that the burden gets taken off the parents. I mean, you're busy working.
Yeah.
Your wife, probably is also busy. You're raising a family. You're the homemaker. You have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
But to add that responsibility, then an extra layer of responsibility to homeschool your child, to making sure that, their arithmetics are good, language acquisition is good, that shouldn't be on you. So we're taking that burden off of the parents.
Yeah.
And we're putting it on us.
Yep.
To where a child has at least 5 to 8 to 10 hours of live instruction with a professional teacher every week.
Yeah.
So they're following up with the arithmetics, with the math and with the social studies and the sciences and the language acquisition. And at the end of the day, I get why you want to homeschool, your kid. If I were living here as well, I would be doing the same, because unfortunately, or fortunately for some, but unfortunately for us, it's really the culture and the indoctrination that's happening.
Yeah.
In the public schools, and for the most part, for the private schools as well.
Yeah.
And we're more of a conservative school.
Right.
Our ethos, our ethics is conservative. And we like that. I don't think we're going to change that at all.
Right, for sure. This video is sponsored by Unraveling the Brain, which is actually my course to train doctors to help these kids in the way that we do. So if you guys know anyone and know any doctors that are in your area that are maybe interested in working with kids, go ahead and send them a link to limitlessfoundation.co, so that way I can help train them, so you guys have a provider close to you guys. Let's jump to the show.
So, Josh, let me ask you, if you had to build a school, if you had to build a kindergarten, let's start with that. What are some of the fundamental things that have to be in the kindergarten?
Not related to learning. Not related to
learning. No, not related to the academic portion.
Yeah, because that's
But everything is related to learning,
yes,
right?
Yes, exactly. Body learning stuff, but not related to the arithmetic and that type of stuff. Take that out of the equation. Things that I would want to see is I would want to see a foundational piece of developing their body, number one. And like looking at some different primitive reflexes. And simply, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to test them on every kid. Having them do movements to reinforce cross-body movements, be able to do complex movements with their body. That's really how we develop a complex brain, is through complex movement. Okay. Working on developing balance centers, working on developing eye tracking centers through just basic activities they can do throughout the day, making sure they are getting a lot of movement, because getting their heart rate up, getting blood flow to their brain now has more resources to learn more efficiently. So in between subjects, moving. I also wouldn't want them sitting all day either. So whether that's standing desks on a BOSU ball, which, with little kids is definitely more challenging, but that movement is so, so important. And then building good postural stability muscles, like with, sitting without backs in their chairs and, to where they're leaning against and just in a poor posture all day.
So it's furniture as well.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. 100%.
For sure.
So they're not, I'm sitting in a poor posture right now, but, I'm not getting that full actual breath, deep breathing that we need for oxygen to our brain.
Or engaging your core.
Versus like if you're sitting in something where you have a stability ball, now I'm activating my core. Now I can get good belly breathing. Just different things like that from an ergonomic standpoint, I think is super important. But then making sure there's, especially young years, like there's plenty of play. Kids that are...
How many hours, if you would say? Let's say the school day starts at 8, ends at 2. What would you do?
Yeah. Yep. The, I don't know the exact statistic.
Let's say 6, 7
I can't remember. Yeah. It's like 5-6 hours a day that I would want a kid that's under the age of 10 moving consistently, because that's how they're really developing their body and their brain, is through movement and physical activity. And, if they're sitting all day in school, they're there for 8 hours, maybe they get a couple recesses, so maybe they get a total of an hour of exercise. Then they go home. Parents maybe they go to a sport, that's another hour or two. They're getting maybe 2 to 3 hours. But then by that time, it's supper time, and then it's bedtime. And, they're not getting that movement that they really, really need to develop their brains and bodies.
And during recess, I don't think they're doing complex movements as well.
Yeah, unless they're playing sports or things like that, that would be the...
Or unless they're being followed by, what we talked about, a coach, an athletic performance coach.
Right. Yep.
Is that complex move? Is that considered complex movement?
Yes, exactly. Like structured, physical development aspects. And then I honestly, probably one of my biggest things is good food. Like,
for sure,
the food at schools is horrific. It's highly processed. None of it's organic. It's all sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. Therefore, they're getting glyphosate, which is
folic acid today. Right?
Yeah, folic acid sprayed on it. 40-something% of our population has MTHFR, so they can't methylate that appropriately, or they can't break it down into the usable form. There's no way I'd ever let my kid eat a school lunch.
Yeah.
So having good meals that are actually organic with good ingredients that have they have the necessary minerals and necessary building blocks and proteins to actually build their body. Those would be the most important aspects for me.
So it would be definitely movement and play.
Yep.
Furniture, or
appropriate ergonomics. Yeah.
And food
and nutrition.
How amazing is that?
Yeah. Easy.
The basic blocks of life. Right?
Exactly. Yes. From an evolutionary standpoint, that's how we built our body, is through movement and good nutrition. So,
well, coming to a school near you, so hopefully soon.
Many more conversations and building a structure around it, and that'd be super fun.
A lot of our online school caters to Olympic athletes. So we have a lot of athletes in our Eastwood Global, in our online school.
Why is that? Tell me more about that.
Just because, when you're training for 5-6 hours a day, and you can't go to school. You can't go to a regular school.
Right.
So you need a school to be able to adapt to your schedule. So we have an amazing equestrian. She travels with her horse every 4 weeks. So she's in a different country every 4 weeks. We have an amazing athlete as well out of Los Angeles. He's soon to be playing for the LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
He trains 6 hours a day.
Right.
So he trains in the morning. He needs a school in the afternoon for 2 hours, and needs a school before bed for 2 hours.
Yep.
So we are able to adapt that schooling schedule specifically for every kid.
Right.
And that goes also with the homeschooling. So we know we're going to be catering our homeschooling that will start as of August of next year. We'll cater to different time zones. We'll cater to different athletic schedules. We'll cater to different schedules of students as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. You had mentioned that the kids in your school, they're bi or trilingual in most cases.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit, because I thought that was super interesting. Just from like a developmental standpoint, like a kid can learn a second or third language really, really, really easy in those younger years, versus when they get older, like an adult, you learn a completely different area of the brain. It's much more challenging. So I thought that was super interesting to talk about that.
So we grew up, or we grow up. I unfortunately did not, because I grew up here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But my kids grow up speaking 3 languages. You know, my daughter, my 2 boys, they speak English and Arabic and French all equally, and it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
So they learn English as their base language, or French as the base language, and then they learn French and Arabic every single day.
Yeah.
So it's part of their conversation, it's part of their daily lives, it's part of their daily routines. And we will also have that in Eastwood Global.
Yeah.
In French, Spanish, German, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So the student will be able to get, students are able to get secondary and third language instruction almost daily.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
And it's true. You teach a child to learn multiple languages before the age of 6, and that's it.
yeah.
I mean, I see it with my kids back home. They speak 3 languages fluently. They understand everything in 3 languages.
Yeah, which is amazing. That's, I tried to learn Spanish a few years ago, and it was like
As an adult,
so
difficult.
so
It's
hard.
difficult.
Yeah, which, our son catches on to everything,
Unless you're living in,
Yeah.
in a Spanish-speaking country.
Yep, for sure.
Your brain is not wired to think like that.
Right.
Where their brain doesn't know how it's wired yet.
Yeah,
It's being wired.
exactly. And that's especially like going on that principle of like in the first 8 to 10 years, our gray matter of our brain is developing at such a high rate, which is like the architecture of our brain. So that's really a huge piece of like the more that they can learn in different things they can learn in those first 8 to 10 years, the much more complex and well-developed their brain really develops.
Dr. Josh, tell me something a little bit about red light therapy. The gym I go to has a red light therapy sauna.
Yeah, panel.
I don't know what it's called, but I know it does. It doesn't heat. It's just red light. It's like extreme red light.
Yeah.
And I know that you use red light therapy here at the clinic.
Yeah.
What is that? Why do you use it? How important is it for children? And can we integrate red light therapy in schooling?
Yeah.
And in what conditions?
Yep. So, well, simply put, just basic principle, the different lights have different waveforms. So like when we look at this, like we go out in the sun, it's a broad spectrum array of light. All the different colors of light are in there. And the in red light has been shown at different frequencies have been shown to have very beneficial therapeutic effect. So we use it especially for like kids that have had any type of brain injury, at any type of area of the brain it's just not well developed at a high enough intensity or wattage, you can actually get to the brain. Like you can, over a certain amount, you can actually penetrate through the skull and actually get photons to the brain. What happens when that goes on is we have what's called our electron transport chain, and there's something called cytochrome C oxidase on there. So it upregulates our cytochrome C oxidase, which actually produces more ATP, or energy, for the brain. So our cells need ATP to function well. And a lot of these kids that are really struggling, they don't produce energy efficiently at all. Their mitochondria are not efficient. Their energy production systems aren't efficient. So it actually really helps us with rehab, because we can go and try to activate different areas of the brain or body, or use their body to activate different areas of the brain. But at the same time, we can use, it's called photobiomodulation or light therapy, to help increase blood flow and increase energy production in that area. So
it's about blood flow and energy production.
Yes.
And can regular kids have that applied to? Can you apply that to regular kids?
I do it to my son all the time. And there's differences between panels and lasers and stuff like that. Like anyone can go buy a panel, and but it's just the power is different. So you're not going to get as much depth. So, but either way, they're still beneficial. Like a red light panel, where you're actually, you're getting light to their skin. Now they're going to increase, upregulate mitochondria. They're going to increase energy, which is huge. So like you don't necessarily need a really powerful laser, but with certain conditions and certain things, the being able to penetrate a lot deeper is much more helpful.
And thank you for that. And how do let's say we wanted to use red light therapy in children in schooling. I know we were in Japan, my wife and I, last month, and the craze is now, you do red light therapy on your face, so that you put a mask, and
Yep.
And I guess that increases the collagen, or
yeah. Yep.
stimulates the collagen,
increases blood flow to your face.
blood flow to your face. And then there was, another thing where you just put an entire, like a hat on your
Yep.
skull and clean
Yep.
something for the hair. And
Yeah.
so how do we do that? How do we bring that tech
Ooh, into a school?
to school? Like, would you sit every single child for 10 minutes in a red light therapy room? I mean, what do you do?
Oh, I don't know. That'd be a little trickier. There's probably regulations around that, I'd guess. But
Probably not in Beirut or in the Middle East, but like,
yeah,
that would be interesting.
But even like if you look back to Greek times, they I don't know the exact era, but they would use sunbathing to heal. Like they would use bathing of the sun. Well, now we're in buildings. There's air conditioning everywhere. There's, we're just not exposed to the sun nearly as much. But that exposure to the sun is super, super beneficial. And simply put, like a lot of this is we're using it as a therapeutic modality. But if you were to get out in the sun twice or three times as much as you are now, that's going to make a substantial effect on our energy production.
Okay.
So we want them moving. We want them outside in fresh air to get sun exposure, to get that on their skin because they're going to produce more energy, number one. Number two, they're going to produce more vitamin D, which is so important for our immune system. And those are really just basic. Again, it comes back to the foundation. Those are basic necessities for life. And a lot of kids just aren't getting that.
No.
And when you can just get them those basic necessities, they do really good. They increase their function dramatically.
Unfortunately, the last few years in Beirut, we've, after the economic collapse and the explosion, there's been we don't have electricity, essentially. We don't have public electricity, so we have to use these generators. And these generators are on 24 hours a day, especially in the city. And that's causing children to inhale these forever chemicals that are never able to. These kids are not able to get them out of their system.
Yeah, those fumes, those gas fumes and stuff. Yeah.
But that they're smelling that every single day, 24 hours a day, the entire year.
Yeah. And there's definitely some risk factors for like developing autism and things like that. Like especially, for example, there's big meta-analysis on this. This isn't just me saying some random stuff. It's if you look at the risk factors, the closer someone is to a kid is to the highway, like the house is to the highway and they're getting a lot of exhaust fumes, the higher rate of autism. And it's suspected that it's the chemical toxicity. But then there's also some people, some different research that says it's the white noise of it that it plays into that too. But that's just a much deeper conversation. But
white noise?
Yeah, the white noise of that, like the constant sound of that.
So,
yeah, yep. And it has to do with when they're hearing that all the time, has to do with how they start to interpret sounds. And like if you, for example, simply put, if you only hear one frequency of sound, or like, this is an example of this would be, let's say someone is Chinese and they might struggle with R's and things like that.
Right.
Well, they don't have those sounds in their culture. Therefore, they don't learn to hear those sounds, or they don't develop the hearing of those sounds efficiently. So therefore, they can't produce those sounds. Because if you can't hear a sound, you can't produce the sound. This is the principles of, it's called Tomatis method, but a hearing program to help retrain this. But the thought process is that you're constantly hearing a white noise sound. You don't learn to differentiate sound appropriately. Therefore, you can't reproduce those sounds efficiently. So, which is really interesting when you start looking into that. But my philosophy would be that it's that pollutants are triggering more inflammation, which eventually triggers autoimmunity, which from a research standpoint, autism there's a lot of autoimmune factors that play into that. So, and then developmental issues in general.
And there has been a rise in autism, not only in Beirut, where we see it all the time, but here in the U.S. as well. I mean,
huge. And huge. Only getting worse.
Right? It's only getting worse.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
And a lot of other, autoimmune diseases as well.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Unfortunately. And it goes back down to the food that we eat. And
all those stressors that are creating inflammation, the environmental stressors, the heavy metal stressors, the mold toxicities, the food we're eating, the pesticides, herbicides sprayed on them. I mean, those are all, they're known neurotoxins. Like they're not like, it's not, that's why they're banned in, like glyphosate is banned in most countries besides ours.
Yeah.
Folic acid is banned in most countries besides a couple. Like a lot of the stuff that's in our food is banned in most other countries, which is sad.
Not to mention any, or maybe you know, I read that Russia hasn't had any. Russia does not allow any genetically modified produce.
Yeah.
At all.
I know.
It's actually illegal.
It is
to do it.
Yep.
How amazing is that?
Yeah, man, what a blessing that is.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's simple. That doesn't fit with our biology. Like we haven't evolved with that over hundreds of thousands of years. Like it's not meant for our body.
Right.
You know, and like what is the long-term effect of that? Well, probably a lot of stuff, you know. It's kind of simple. If you just think of like, what are the foundational pieces we need? We need good food that's organic, and we need to move. We need to be in sunshine for just normal cellular function. Like if you can get those things and avoid all the other junk out there, you're probably going to do a lot better in all aspects of life. So,
and especially for learning.
Yeah, especially for learning, 100%. So awesome, man. This is a fun conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for bringing me.
Hopefully it spread some light for some parents. Yeah. You know, if people have listened to me, they know I'm a big fan of homeschooling, and I was really excited to hear about your program, especially looking into that and the benefits that I'll bring for so many kids out there, so many parents out there that like me, like I'm same scenario, like, well, I want to homeschool. I don't even know where to start, you know, and so this would be a great resource for them. So
you have me. So.
Yeah, now I got you. So tell everyone, you know, websites they can go to if they're interested in homeschooling, especially in the United States, or if they are in the Middle East, where they
actually anywhere.
Find you.
Our school, our homeschooling and online schooling is for the world, and you know, again, we do it from the heart.
Yeah,
we do it with a lot of love. So it's Eastwood.global.
Okay.
The online school is called Eastwood Global. So it's www.eastwood.global. My name is Michel Khoury, Khoury, and we love learning and we love teaching children.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on.
For everything.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Of course.
Thanks, Dr. Josh.